Chelsea, world champions. Has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? It was not enjoyable. It was not fun. It was a really, really poor performance, in my opinion, for large periods. I'm not taking anything away from Palmeiras, who, as expected, gave their all. This is such a huge game for them, as it was for Chelsea. I was kind of a little bit irked, actually, as the game was going on. The amount of talk of how this game meant more to Palmeiras than it did to Chelsea. I was desperate to win this because, you know, Chelsea, the last time we got into this position in the Club World Cup was in 2012. You know, Cesar Azpilicueta, who very much, you know, I think encapsulates a lot of the emotion around winning this, because he has now won the full set at Chelsea. You think about how long ago that was in December 2012. I mean, that feels like a lifetime ago in terms of what has happened at Chelsea Football Club since. But there's also the addition that this is the last infinity stone, if you want to call it, to place in Roman Abramovich's gauntlet, basically, of all the trophies that Chelsea have won under his ownership. I mean, this is it. This was the last one. And although, as I say, it doesn't quite have the same emotion as, say, the full-time whistle in the Champions League, it means a lot, because it's what this club is about. It's, you know, it's consistently winning trophies, and you hope that these moments under Thomas Tuchel that he's had since he arrived last year are just building to something more. You know, I can go through, I made a lot of notes during the game in terms of my frustrations, some of the positives, the small positives, and kind of looking forward. But at the same time, you just got to relish the fact that Chelsea, whenever Chelsea have won a trophy, and we've been so blessed and privileged to see our club win trophies. We haven't gone 2 seasons under Abramovich without winning at least one trophy. And you look at the time we've had under Thomas Tuchel so far, and the fact that by the end of this month we could pick up a second. I mean, I'm going to the League Cup final at the end of this month, and I could see Chelsea win another one. As much as we can, you know, there are things to criticise, there are things to talk about, you know, especially in terms of the Premier League, in terms of getting back to the top of the Premier League. 16 points, I think, now off the top because City won. But winning trophies and having these experiences is something that I think a lot of fans in football would trade to get their hands on this. So you need to be humble. You need to appreciate these moments, because you never know when the next one is coming round. Even though we believe that Tuchel, obviously we have another chance against Liverpool, you have to appreciate these moments and savour these moments. And it is very special to see your club become world champions. That is something special. And it's special to come up against a club like Palmeiras, because we don't really come up against them other than this is what makes this competition so unique to Chelsea, because we don't know the next time we're going to win the Champions League. You know, facing Palmeiras maybe in say a pre-season friendly is the one time we faced them, but that's not really competitive. So to get that experience, to win once again in the way we did, a lot more dramatically than we probably would have hoped, and a lot more stressful than we would have hoped. Kai Havertz again, the man who was bought in 2020, is kind of this massive statement signing. I've written about him. I've criticised him because I don't think his performances have been brilliant this season. He steps up, you know, at a very pressurised moment and scores another winner in a massive, massive game. I don't know really where to start. I mean, I do want to talk about Azpilicueta, because a bit like Thiago Silva, but, you know, Azpilicueta very much in a Chelsea-centric way. We have to talk about him in this review because this guy has won the Grand Slam now. I think N'Golo Kante can join him if we win the League Cup. I believe he's the only other one in the squad that, you know, but he needs the League Cup. But this is, you know, Dave, a decade at Chelsea, and there's a lot of obviously talk about him potentially moving on in the summer. You know, we'll wait and see what happens with that. But he has just been an extraordinary servant at Chelsea, and considering, I find it quite miraculous, you know, how low of a fee he was to come in. He even spoke about it this week in an interview with Lee Parker, kind of speaking, you know, he wasn't one of the big signings that summer, not like Eden Hazard. So he didn't come with a big reputation, and he was stepping into a squad of players that had just won the Champions League. Some of those, JT, Petr Cech, Ashley Cole, Frank Lampard, heroes, icons at Chelsea, and kind of the responsibility or kind of the challenge to rise to that level of legendary status at Chelsea. And he has done that in the decade he's been here. The versatility, the consistency, the maturity, the leadership he has now with that armband. And he's just such a wonderful professional. He's one player that you just put up there and say that's a template of every Chelsea player you want to follow. And he has won it all. And I love the last 2 trophies he's won, actually. Of course, take away the Super Cup, the Champions League, and this one, because it very much feels like he's the leader of the team, or he's the senior figure, one of the senior figures. I think maybe in the past when he was still around with Jose, you know, and JT was still about and he was lifting the trophy then, you kind of feel like this is kind of his team, this is his era, and just wonderful stuff. I was happy with the team lineup with Tuchel. I'm going to get to something because I do think Tuchel is lucky. I think he's very lucky that we got the penalty and Kai scores it, because he made a double substitution, in my opinion. Can't quite remember the timing, but it was not long after Palmeiras had equalised that I think if we hadn't have won that game, I would have certainly been coming on here and criticising heavily, because I don't think it helped Chelsea. I think it made our game regress, and I think it's quite an interesting decision he made at that point. But I like the lineup. I mean, it wasn't much as there was debate about Kepa or Mendy. The frame of reference I put around this to people I've been discussing the issue of Kepa or Mendy with. If Real Madrid are in this game in the past, do they play Ronaldo? Yes, they do. If Liverpool are in this game, do they play all their big players? Van Dijk, Alisson, Sadio Mane, Mohamed Salah? Of course they do. And Chelsea are in this game, we play our first choice goalkeeper, and that is Edouard Mendy, as well as Kepa has done. And it's the same with N'Golo Kante. Kante had a very weird performance. I felt he didn't do anything particularly wrong in the first half, but he kind of went in waves for me. There was a period in the second half where, especially from the start of the second half to Lukaku's goal, I think he was brilliant. But then he seemed to lose it, like a few other Chelsea players, kind of in that extra time. And it was quite a surprise not to see Jorginho feature at all, really, not kick a ball in this final. But that was another big decision. And of course, Mason Mount coming back into the team. The performance in the first half was poor. I felt that Kai in particular was getting into some really good positions, but just decision making. And that was kind of a general thing. Callum Hudson-Odoi, ironically, had these chances to burst down the left at left wing back. I think it was a massive statement for Alonso to be dropped, because I thought Alonso was really poor against Al Hilal, and I think he deserved to be dropped, but it was a massive statement. And Callum wasn't really taking his opportunity. His crossing from that side was really woeful in the first half, and you were kind of thinking he's not taking his opportunity. Mason going down with an injury, even though Mason I don't think had the best start to the game, his energy, his influence, you think in a big game like this you want Mason playing, and fingers crossed he can get back fit pretty soon. But I just felt in the first half we were lacking that rhythm, and it was becoming pretty tedious, to be honest. And there were a few warning signs from Palmeiras on the counter, and yeah, you're in a final and you're kind of thinking this feels like a very, very dull Premier League game, and that was kind of my concern. But then it was one moment that I could tell that maybe Tuchel had a go at them. The pace of the passing was much better at the start of the second half. And for all of his woeful crossing, Callum hits one right on the money to Rom. Brilliant goal from Rom. I don't think Rom can take many criticisms after these last two games. I felt particularly in this game, from a very early point, I think service was lacking in the first half. And then when he got that service, he was absolutely ruthless. Apart from the luck he got from the winner against Al Hilal, this was just a brilliant header, a brilliant centre-forwards header, perfect positioning. Almost, as much as, there are comparisons. Lukaku, his idol at Chelsea, Didier Drogba, it was kind of you felt if this was going to be the winner, what a narrative it would be. Unfortunately, it wasn't the winner, but I felt for both players it was such a massive moment, particularly Lukaku, who then was seeming to get just growing confidence more and more. I felt some of the link up he was having with, say, Kai or Pulisic, just nice movements, and I think there is encouragement for Romelu Lukaku, but then he gets taken off, as I mentioned earlier. This double sub that happens that I didn't see coming, where Lukaku and Hudson-Odoi, the two players responsible for the opening goal, get taken off. Before that happens, obviously Palmeiras get their penalty from Thiago Silva, the most experienced player on the pitch, or one of the most experienced, player that you don't expect to make mistakes. Why is his hand up there? So frustrating. It was such a killer blow, particularly at 1-0, where you felt like, because Chelsea had been so dominant, having that goal now, Chelsea could really press on and push Palmeiras back. Of course, the penalty, it lifts their crowd, because it was pretty much a majority Palmeiras crowd out there, and the game turned again, and I just felt taking off. Specifically, you can have a go at Hudson-Odoi, even though he did create the goal. I felt his overall performance wasn't brilliant, but taking off Lukaku for me just lost Chelsea's influence or sort of dominance in a centre forward aspect for the rest of the game. It was really, really frustrating. I felt until Ziyech came on for extra time, you were kind of struggling to see where a goal was going to come from. Werner, I think, started off as kind of a centre forward, and then when Ziyech came on, he went over to the left where he had a little bit of a better time, but still, it sapped a lot of energy out of it, and you were kind of just hoping for a set piece. you kind of go through extra time. I mean, there were a few crosses that went in from Ziyech that you felt could have happened. There was a few heart and mouth moments where Palmeiras were on the counter, but really we come down to the penalty, the handball. I saw an analysis, they were saying it was a little bit harsh, and I can understand how close it is, but I kind of think Dave's shot there, if that goes through, there's a chance that goes in, and I think that's probably what's being judged there, because Dave takes a swing at it. I don't think it's going over the bar. I think it's going on target, and I think it's a penalty. And then there was this confusion of who was going to take it. Dave was holding it for a long time, and I thought, the narrative once again, if this guy takes the winning penalty and runs away celebrating as the captain, it would just make the night. But then we gave it to Kai, and Kai I don't think has taken many penalties for Chelsea. He took a really poor one in the Super Cup final against Villarreal in the shootout. I think it was Chelsea's first penalty that night, but his penalty was absolutely exceptional. I mean, it really was so cool, so calm, so collected. Sat the keeper down, and then bedlam basically. And I think Palmeiras lost their heads after that. They got the red card. Chelsea just ran it out. World champions. There are other things to dissect within the game. I think again, there's a big conversation to be had about Chelsea's play, about our attack just not really clicking, apart from small moments, and just how this is. You don't really talk about this after a final that you've won. But Chelsea are just not that fun to watch at the moment, and we still have a lot of this season to go. This is not the last game of the season, and that's why I think it is a relevant talking point and something Tuchel really needs to fix once we get back into Premier League competition, because the Premier League is although we're not going to be able to fix this, I don't think this season, unless we have some miraculous turn of form and City collapse, because 16 points clear now after winning at Norwich. It's all about building to next season, and some of that cannot be fixed this year. I think we all get forward to the summer, but I just still look at this team from an attacking perspective, and I still demand more. I still want more. I still think that it's just not fun to watch a lot of Chelsea games recently, and I'm not, as I say, I don't want to sound privileged and sort of like I'm not grateful for the fact that my club are world champions, but if we're having a serious conversation about the game, you'd think that Tuchel and his coaching staff will be analysing that after, because since Spurs we haven't really had a convincing performance. Yes, finals are finals, they're always tense games, they're always ones that are close, that are decided by small moments, 1 or 2 goals, if that. But yeah, world champions. We came here to win it. We needed to win it because you don't know when we're going to be back at this competition, and also it's radically changing, isn't it, in terms of the format? So it's probably going to be a lot more difficult to win moving forward. So to be able to do that is absolutely massive. I think the confidence of, say, younger players within that squad just keep on winning. It's lovely to see James and Chilwell involved. Of course, the likes of Callum, Mason as well, who had to come off, but just younger players, even though he didn't take any part. Chalobah being there as well as part of the squad. It's all about building that winning mentality, which is such a stereotype, but it's about building this mentality that is going to grow and grow and grow under Tuchel. That it's just about winning. You get to a final, you win the final, you move on to the next one. That was what the previous era of Chelsea players did, so ferociously. And you can never moan about winning a trophy, even if it doesn't quite feel the same significance as even personally beating Liverpool in a final. But still, wonderful win. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm not quite sure who I'm going to give man of the match. I think they gave something to Thiago Silva at the end of the game. They gave something to Dave at the end of the game. I mean, maybe defensively you're looking there, but Kai Havertz once again. I really want to see Kai take his Chelsea career by the scruff of the neck a bit more. And I know that sounds hilarious after he scored a Champions League final. He scored in the Champions League final and he scored here. But I just think more consistently, there's so much talent there to unleash. And I just, all these things you hope are sort of building to something bigger with Kai Havertz at Chelsea. And maybe now he can get a run in the team, potentially with Lukaku, potentially with Mount or other players, and he can build that connection. Those are my longish thoughts, a lot more long than the Champions League reaction when I was a mess. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Let me know your thoughts on the game in the comments below, and I will see you again very soon. Hit that subscribe button as well. Up the Chelsea.